Hey, and welcome back, or if it's your first time here, welcome. This isn't quite a normal video for me, so I'm sorry if my energy feels a little bit off. Those of you who are returning probably noticed that what was supposed to be a single week off from videos turned into a whole month, and that ties into today's topic, burnout. First, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to those who stuck with me through that unplanned hiatus, and those who came back, and to my amazing patrons who have been more than patient with me. Second, I want to let you guys know that tying in today's topic, one change that I'm making to this channel is doing a video every other week, which will be going up on Thursdays at 3 p.m. instead of the previous every Friday at 3:30. It just works out a little bit better for me, so I hope you'll understand. Now, I want to establish that this isn't necessarily YouTube burnout. I haven't been doing YouTube that long, and it was ultimately just the first casualty of a much bigger thing. I'm starting to do better now. Recovery from burnout is not a linear journey, and unlike what some people might have you believe, it's not something that gets better immediately when you just go outside and touch some grass. But today I just want to share what sort of long-term changes I kind of made and what I did in the short term, and kind of what I learned from this, in case that can help anyone else. Now, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I have been having some physical health issues over the last few months. And even before those became a factor, I was really just working an entirely unreasonable schedule. I have a day job in addition to my art career, and between the two, I was working easily over 80 hours a week. I've always been someone who doesn't really need much sleep, but I do need consistent sleep. And I was staying up well into the night working until I physically couldn't even hold a pen anymore. And how late I was able to push myself just kept getting earlier and earlier, and I kept waking up later and later as, basically just depression sank in, and, my emotional state kept getting worse. And I finally realized that I'd pushed too far when I arrived late to work one day, and I just couldn't stop thinking about how I wanted to just tuck myself under the desk and cry where nobody could see me. And this was weeks after I started to become aware that my output, both in terms of art and my day job, which is a very people-focused position, was just suffering severely. I couldn't bring myself to make social media posts because I just couldn't summon the energy to give a false presentation of happiness or, being stable. So I ended up completely shutting down. I'm very lucky to have a small amount of paid time off from my day job, and I used a portion of it to allow me a steady 7 days off in a row. I spent that time doing damn near nothing. Except, it wasn't nothing. It just felt that way because I'd convinced myself that anything that wasn't churning out artwork or fulfilling obligations was nothing. That it didn't matter and it was inconsequential as long as I was meeting my goals so I could be happy in some distant future day. This included doing things as minor as taking time to relax, and as major as cleaning my room and putting my laundry away. Now, in that time off, there were certain projects that couldn't wait, and I did still work on those. But the main thing that I want to talk about here, now that I've kind of established how bad it got without me even noticing, are the changes that I made during that week and that I'm trying to make continuing after. Starting with the week itself. For me, it was really important to choose a set amount of time to just figure myself out. I know that not everyone can take a whole week off. I'm really fortunate with the schedule I have with my day job and the patience of my patrons and clients to have been able to do that. But for me, at least 3 consecutive days can do wonders to give me time to just kind of recenter. I think if I'd given myself much more than a week, maybe 8 days at the very most, It might have been too much. But it was still important to make sure I had enough time to just sort of breathe without worrying about keeping up face. By that point, my social media had already gone silent, and the only thing I needed to worry about when it came to putting on an air of being okay was when I went to work at my day job. And the break from doing that was just incredibly necessary. And then, during that week, I ended up taking some time to watch a new show with a friend, which in turn led us to another show because both were based on books written by the same author. Their names are Heaven Official's Blessing and Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, or the Untamed in the case of the second one. I was originally going to try and say their original names, but then decided it's been over 10 years since I took Chinese, and I was going to butcher it. So, but both are Chinese drama series based on BL novels that have gotten pretty popular. And the reason I bring them up is because both of these shows don't have an English dub, which means that in order to watch them, I couldn't multitask. And anyone who knows me knows that I pretty much cannot live without multitasking. I almost never just sit down and watch a show. I have to be watching a show and drawing. I have to be watching a show and working on scheduling posts or planning, etc., etc. It's the same reason, really, that sitting down to read has become so hard for me. If I can't work while I'm doing it, I can't do it. But watching these subtitle shows forced me to do that, and it forced me to really just sit and get engaged with the story in a way that I otherwise wouldn't or couldn't. It helped that they're both really good. Don't let the BL label fool you. There's a lot of really rich and complex storytelling. This might have happened with any series that I sat down to watch, but it might be good that it happened to some that have multiple adaptations. Because the first thing I did was look up the webcomics for both, and then eventually got my hands on the books. This seems like a tangent, but I promise it's relevant because, you see, before this, I was having a lot of trouble feeling joy or excitement over media. Everything I'd loved before was sort of dulled by my overwhelming sense of obligation to my work. And that's really common when you're depressed or burnt out. And being forced by the nature of a piece of media to give it the attention it deserves, let me really remember how to fall in love with a thing, which is so important for artists and people who create. If you're feeling burnt out because your work feels bland and unimaginative, it could be because you're forgetting to fall in love with work that other people make. Even when we never speak to each other directly, artists are always communicating and learning from one another. It's so vital that we take the time to enjoy the work of other artists, be it films, books, cartoons, comics, or just really sitting down and admiring an illustration, or, going to an art museum if you can afford it, or if they have free admission days. And I think, too, for me, it was important to do this at least partially on my own. While I watched the shows in sync with my friend over Discord, I read the comics all on my own, and I also rewatched Heaven Official's Blessing by myself. This gave me time to really just reflect on what I was reading and watching in a way that I couldn't when I felt I had an audience. I was free to pause and admire the way certain frames looked, because Did I mention that both the show and the comic are gorgeous? Excuse me, my cat decided that he was going to make himself known in that moment. Will we ever go a video on this channel without a Severus interruption? We'll see. Alright, kitty interruption aside, you might hear the train in the background. Hopefully it's not too loud if you can. But something else that I did in my time off was to find a few excuses to break routine and get out of the house. Now, a lot of the time you'll hear people say in these burnout videos like, oh, you should go on vacation, travel. And for a lot of us that really isn't an option financially. I would have loved to just roll off to the Grand Canyon or something, but traveling halfway across the country just isn't something I can do, even with lots of planning, much less at the drop of a hat. But I did just drive into the city from my dinky rural town, and admittedly it was for some errands, but while I was there I took the time to buy a bubble tea and browse a few shops. I'm not someone who splurges on a daily or weekly coffee or whatever, so a little treat like that really is quite luxurious for me. Just breaking routine, going out to places I don't normally go, and doing things I didn't normally do, and just getting a very small treat was a huge relief to me. And then finally, on the last 2 days of my break, I took the time to sit down and seriously reassess my schedule. Now, I'm kind of a terrifying calendar fiend. I have my weeks meticulously planned out in exacting hour-based segments based on my Google Calendar. However, the last time I had edited my weekly schedule, I was working different hours at my day job, and I only barely adjusted to the new ones, instead of actually sitting down and taking the time to really look at it. And with any kind of schedule, it's really important to reevaluate it regularly. So something I'm going to try and do going forward is, every month or maybe every 3 months, I'm going to sit down and really make sure that the schedule on my calendar is still working for me, and I'm not just ignoring it because it stopped working a long time ago. In this case, at that time, I made the last schedule 84 hours a week. 84 hours a week actually felt like a relief, because I was coming off of having 3 jobs, 2 day jobs and my illustration work, down to only 2, after food service nearly destroyed me the first time. But that's capitalism for you, baby. Still, 84 hours is too much for pretty much anyone to work, especially if you're still feeling guilty in the few free time hour blocks that you do have about not doing work. And it left me with really no daylight hours to do chores or other projects. I couldn't justify just making a drive into town to get a coffee, because that's a whole 45 or more minutes that I had to spend not working. And that's if the line was short. Now, my schedule does still include about 66 hours of work. That's everything from my day job, drawing, time recording this video that you're listening to, time for editing and posting to social media, which is very much work when you're an artist. It's still a lot, but it's also unfortunately true that most creatives can't afford to work only 30 to 40 hours a week. Some people even consider the time we spend doing our jobs is not real work, and boy is that a topic for another time. But I can promise you that it is work. But what feels important to me with this schedule is that I trimmed down how much I have to be working. I put in blocks of time where I am scheduled to do things like chores and to just sit down and read, that I used to just have lumped in with free time. And it removes that pressure and that feeling that I theoretically could be working. This is scheduled time, that are things that are important and enrich, or at least help maintain, my life. So, to summarize, here's 4 things I did to help with my burnout, and that I think might be able to help you if you're dealing with the same thing. Take a set amount of time off. Decide in advance how many days you're giving yourself and stick to that. Don't push yourself to work during that time, but make sure you think critically on why you want to if you're going to extend that time off. Take the time to enjoy a piece of work, a show, a movie, a comic, etc., without interruption. Really sit with it and let yourself fall into the story or the piece. Get out of the house and do something you don't normally do. It doesn't have to be a full vacation. Just go to a part of town you don't normally. Check out a shop you don't normally go to, or just go for a walk and flop down in the grass at a park or something. Break your routine and go somewhere you wouldn't normally be. And at the end of your time off, look at your life and what you can be doing differently to reduce your stress and how much you're working going forward. If you don't have a schedule, consider making one. If anyone wants tips on that, I guess I can try to help, but I also have a video from a pro artist that helped me that I can link you to. If your schedule is crammed full of work hours, consider trimming down on them wherever you can. Think about not just lumping time in for chores and entertainment into your free time, but deliberately set aside time just for those things. And of course, this is just what worked for me. I can't promise that it'll help you. These humans are strange, varied little things, and the solutions to even the exact same problem can sometimes be very different. Still, I hope that this helps even just one person dealing with burnout, and I hope that I've made the advice based on what worked for me universal enough that it can apply to a lot of different people. And then in some lighter news, I do have a few updates that I just want to share on a more general level. I'm sure that it's obvious that up until now I've been using some very basic editing software for my videos. With luck, this will be the last video uploaded that's made using the basic editor in Windows Photos. I'm looking into some free options that offer at least a little more range of options for what I'm doing. So hopefully my videos will look a lot nicer soon. Thank you, Car, for your interruption. And with any luck, in the next month or two, I'm hoping to start occasionally doing weekend streams. These are something that I'd set up just during my normal working hours, either on Saturday or Sunday, and I might see if I can't do something special just for patrons. It's a bit of a learning curve since I haven't streamed since like early 2017, and the software I used doesn't even seem to exist anymore, but I'll have more on that once I get it figured out and it's closer to reality. With all of that said, thank you all so much for sticking around. If you're here at the end, I adore you, and if you didn't, you're still pretty cool. If this video helped you in any way, I would really appreciate it if you would like or share, just because I know those algo gods really hate when people take time off, and I'd like for people to actually see this, because I really did try to be very open and vulnerable, I guess, and helpful. Other than that, I really hope you have a great day and a great week. And as the final closing to today's video, I just want to say a huge thank you to my super amazing patrons. You guys make my life so much more manageable by supporting me. So thank you to Holmes, Brooke Dufresne, Chamomeleon, Guts and Gaze, Tess Frost, Spirit of Stars, Ki Hiromaru, Arisark, Miles Mentis, Karen Name, Jordan Kirian, Planchell, Tesla Charlatan, and to my amazing new patron, Nixium. You guys really do make my life so much more manageable with your support every month, and I cannot thank you enough.